So the Yu-Gi-Oh! Rarity Collection has just recently came out, and Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards are cheaper than ever. Forbidden Droplets are $3, Ash Blossoms are $2, Lightning Storms are $1 to $2, Baron de Fleurs are almost $2, Pot of Prosperity only about $7 or $8. But that kind of exposes a little bit of a problem. See, I'm not trying to say that the Rarity Collection is bad. Far from it. I think it's probably one of the best Yu-Gi-Oh! Products they've ever made, period, and is certainly going to make Yu-Gi-Oh! More accessible for tons of new people. However, I think it comes down to the simple fact of too little, too late. Let me explain what I'm talking about. So let me start with the obvious, like I just mentioned at the beginning. Cards are cheaper now than they've ever been before with these Rarity reprints. You can get cards like Baron de Fleur, which used to be a $30 to $60 card, for only about $2 now in a super rare rarity. On top of that, if you're a collector or somebody who really likes to bling out your deck, you can also purchase the higher rarity versions of whatever you want. If you want it to look like a Starlight, if you want it to look like a collector's rare, an ultimate rare, you can do that as well and pay that top dollar. My problem really comes down to timing. If we're going to use Baron de Fleur as an example, the first print that it ever got, as far as I'm aware, is in 2021 with the Legendary Duelist Synchro Storm collection, and obviously it was really hard to pull there, and hence it's going to be very, very expensive, and had been very expensive for a while. I even remember it hitting like $80, $90, $100 back in those times. Now it's been about 2 years since then, and we're finally getting a reprint of it that actually makes the price super accessible for people who want to play like a synchro deck, but couldn't access their own because it was too expensive. But compare that to a card like Triple Tactics Talent, a super important card that really started hitting the meta in the last couple years and kind of comes in and out of the meta depending on how much like hand traps and boards are built and stuff like that. That was first released 3 years ago. 3 years ago in Rise of the Duelist. And if you couldn't get it back then, it took until Magnificent Mavens last year before you could realistically afford it for about $10 to $15. Now it's in the Rarity Collection, you can get it for much cheaper. I'm seeing it at about $4 to $5 right now. But here's where the problem lies in. Triple Tactics Talent is a great card. I love using it. It's an awesome card. But there's another version of the card already. It's called Triple Tactics Thrust. Is that in Rarity Collection? Absolutely not. Instead, it has now gotten a new version of the card that is arguably more powerful because it can search whatever it wants. You know, debatable, but Thrust is still a very prevalent meta card that sort of takes in a slot like Triple Tactics Talent, and it's not here. It's in a brand new set, and it's hugely expensive. Additionally, you have cards like IP Masquerena, which used to be a super important Link 2 card, but we've gotten that power crept already too with SP Little Knight, which is still an insanely expensive card, which I talked about in this last video that you can click right up here. So I won't rehash that here, but I just want to use that as the point out that, like, yeah, sure, IP Masquerena's been kind of affordable for a long time now, but SP Little Knight is just a better version, is going to be used in tons of things, and YCS's it's being used at like almost 100% rate at this point. It is insanely good. Super good in the meta. If you don't have that card, you're basically just putting yourself at an automatic disadvantage, and nothing about the Rarity Collection is going to change that. So I guess this video really is talking about power creep and how that affects card prices. Right now, Yu-Gi-Oh! Is in a state where cards are just getting super, super powerful and getting more powerful than ever before, and it's kind of making some of the Rarity Collection for me kind of fall a little flat, just because we're starting to see a new wave of Yu-Gi-Oh! Cards come in, starting with Thrust, going into SP Little Knight, and I don't want to know what that next version is. We have Typhon as well, that's sort of a counter to Zeus. Well, not a counter to Zeus, but it is a counterpart to Zeus. I'm not saying it's going to replace Zeus, but to the point that we're seeing new versions of these cards that we are used to in the meta, but they're going to stay expensive because they're not going to be reprinted for another 2-3 years, and we're just going to be playing with the behind versions, the 3-year-old versions at this point. Right now, it's a really good time, because if you were to go to a Yu-Gi-Oh! Tournament right now, and you only were able to get cards from the 25th anniversary collection, I think you would do pretty fine, because you have stuff like Droplet, you have stuff like Ash, all the hand traps, you have some of the board breakers and stuff like that, Lava Golems, Nibiru's, all this other stuff. But as time goes on, I think the Rarity Collection is really going to start getting behind. What happens whenever Konami decides, because they will, print a better version of Barone, because they don't know how to fix this game or how to change this game to make it more interesting through formats besides just power creep. When is Baron de Fleur going to get power crept by a different synchro monster that's just better? Baron de Fleur power crept previous synchro monsters like Stardust Dragon or Crystal Wing Clear Synchro Dragon and cards like that, so it's going to probably happen to Barone too, and I just think that this Rarity Collection should have came like maybe a year or two earlier. Again, I'm not trying to be a Debbie Downer here. I think the Rarity Collection is a huge, great step in the right direction for Konami and is going to make Yu-Gi-Oh! Way more accessible for new players. I just think Konami needs to stop being so slow about it and start doing products like this way more often. Some of these cards desperately needed reprints for a long time, Pot of Prosperity being the #1 in my opinion, as a card that only had 2 printings before this, and before recent memory it only had the 1 printing, and Pot of Prosperity is a crazy card that just helps consistency, and if you're not playing it in a deck that can run it, then you're pretty much just always going to be at a disadvantage because you're not going to be as consistent as someone who can. I'd be very interested to see how Konami actually makes money or thinks about this process, because if I'm just looking at TCG Player and I sort it by best selling for the 25th anniversary Rarity Collection, I can see that outside of the box itself, the very most expensive thing that is being bought out the most right now is Ash Blossom Joy Spring in the Quarter Century Secret Rarity. But the second most best-selling card right now is Pot of Prosperity as a super rare, which makes sense because it's been probably one of the least accessible cards in recent memory for the longest time. Then you get a bunch of the other high rarity stuff before you get 2 Droplet at super, Triple Texas Talent at super, Ash at super, Infinite Impermanent at super, Lightning Storm at super, and Baron de Fleur at super. So clearly this stuff sells. I just wonder if it's a margin thing and they would rather sell it at a higher price. I don't really know. So to wrap up my point, I really just hope that Konami takes the hype, takes the joy, takes the positivity they've been getting out of the Rarity Collection from fans, from players, competitive players, to YouTubers like myself, and really hones in on that and realizes that maybe making the game more accessible is a good thing, and hopefully we won't have to wait 3 years for an SP Little Knight reprint, or a Typhon reprint, or a Thrust reprint. I mean, I know we have Thrust in the OTS pack, so that's not really making it that much cheaper for new players, so I really hope that Konami takes this as a full lesson and really goes hard on this kind of stuff, because the more people who can play Yu-Gi-Oh!, the more people who can afford to play Yu-Gi-Oh!, the better. You want your card game to grow, and the best way to do that is to actually make cards affordable, especially if you're only going to have the one format, and you're committing to the one format where these cards are relevant. Otherwise, you need to make another format, because this is not going to work if SP Little Knight is just going to be this insane card and nobody's going to be able to afford it. Let's reprint SP Little Knight sooner rather than later, maybe a year from now at bare minimum, please. And I probably won't have this problem. But for now, I think this Rarity Collection really just shows the disparity between sort of power creep. I think it shows that Konami is just a bit too slow and really needs to use this as a lesson to hopefully get these reprints to us sooner. What do you guys think about what I just said and how sort of the Rarity Collection is going and what I noticed about the power creep problem? Comment down below, let me know. And if you like this type of video, hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you get notified for every video on my channel. Until then, I'll see you guys on the next one. Peace.